today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. Today we're going to be talking about like a normal true crime case but mixed with the dark web. And as soon as this person suggested this case is a channel member suggested case, by the way, so shout out to Ellie for suggesting this one. Today we're going to be talking about Peter Scully. But the dark web is one of my favourite things to research and watch other people's videos on. So when I found out the dark web was kind of intertwined in this case, I knew I had to cover it because I don't get to talk about that stuff often on this channel. Let me know if you do want me to kind of like branch out into that kind of stuff, because I love talking about it, reading about it, stuff like that. However, today's case that we're going to be talking about is very disturbing. Very, very, very disturbing. Like, potentially the worst I've ever covered on my channel. However, I haven't added in details in this case, so I would say it's comparable to the Junko Furuta case and the Hello Kitty murder. However, I haven't added in those details because the victims in this case are actually children. So if that's something that you personally don't want to watch or you can't handle listening to, that's completely fine. Just click out now and I'll be back next week with another video. However, if you do still want to watch this video, just know that I haven't added in the details. I've just kind of outlined what happened in this case. This case involves human trafficking, serial rape, kidnap, abuse, torture, but that's going to be the last warning I give. Normally I give a warning in the beginning and a warning right before it happens, but because there are such strong themes throughout the whole video, that's the only warning I'm going to give. And I'm sorry this intro has been so long, but it kind of had to be. So yeah, like I said, today we're going to be talking about the case of Peter Scully. But before we do, I just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This video is for educational purposes, and everything that I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. So before we get into this video, I think you need a little bit of like background information on the dark web, because I know a lot of you know what it is, but a lot of you might not know exactly what it is. The dark web, not to be confused with the deep web, those are different things. So there's actually like 3 tiers to the web. I'm trying my best. There's 3 levels to the World Wide Web. There is the surface web, which is what we're on right now. That's what you're watching this video on. That's what you do your online shopping on, social media, search engines, everything that you can access on a day-to-day is on the surface web. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there are billions of different unique web pages on the surface web. You could try and click through every single one and you wouldn't even get through like a quarter of them in your lifetime. There are so freaking many, and that is just on the surface web. And the surface web is actually only 5% of the whole web. So imagine how big the rest of it is that we don't access on the day-to-day. And the rest of that 95% is mainly deep web. Now there's a difference between deep web and dark web, so let me explain that now. The deep web is... I don't really understand it because obviously none of us use it. I think it's mainly used by like professionals. It contains like everyone's medical records because like, you know, it's not safe to have them on the surface web, and doctors all around the world might need to access one person's things, so they put it on the deep web. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But I think there's like government-y things on the deep web, God knows, just stuff that we're not allowed to see. And then you go even further than that, and the last 5 to 10% of the World Wide Web is the dark web, and it is as scary as it sounds. On the dark web, there is so much illegal activity going on. Drug trafficking, there's stories of people selling their organs. A large percentage of the dark web is illegal porn. As you might expect, a lot of that is child porn, and that is where a lot of paedophile communities congregate. However, it is very hard to track anyone on the dark web because to use it you kind of have to have like something to hide your IP address. So it's not a VPN because those aren't strong enough. You've got to use a whole like laptop software Don't know, I've never done it, but it means that you can't get tracked because people on the dark web will try and steal your information, they'll try and track you down. But yeah, there's even worse stuff than what I've said on the dark web. I've heard stories of snuff films, which, if you don't know what a snuff film is, it's where someone will kill another human being, murder another human being on camera and post it online. Sometimes they even live stream a murder. There's human trafficking, there's, like I said, paedophile rings, very illegal videos being made. I've heard stories of like hitmen. You can hire hitmen to go and kill someone for you. Horrible, horrible things go on the dark web, and this video showcases some of the worst on the dark web. So our story starts between 2012 and 2014. A video began circulating on the surface web that clearly did not belong there. It didn't come from the surface web. It was a video that had somehow found its way out of the dark web, and it began leaking into chat rooms and forums on the surface web, mainly in Europe. And this video, well, it was more like a film. It was a 4-part film. Each part was around 10 to 15 minutes each. This film was called Daisy's Destruction, and Daisy's Destruction was regarded as almost an urban legend, well, definitely an urban legend across a lot of the surface web. People were talking and they were saying that they'd heard about this horrifying video, this really disturbing film called Daisy's Destruction. However, none of them had seen it with their own eyes, so they didn't know if it truly existed. And people were debating whether this video was real or not, because who would be sick and twisted enough to create something like Daisy's Destruction? But unfortunately, it was real. This film was real. It was created on the dark web and it was sent to surface web forums. So now I'm gonna kind of outline the things that went on in this video in Daisy's Destruction, and I'm not gonna go into details like I said a million times. I'm just gonna tell you the themes that were going on. It was a 4-part film with 3 adults in it, 2 women and a man, all torturing and raping 3 children. The children were aged 12, 11, and the youngest one of the 3 was Daisy herself, and she was just 18 months old at the time. She was 1.5. She was a baby. So like I've said so many times in this video already, I'm not going to go into details about what happened in these videos. And that is partially because I don't know. I don't know what actually happened. Online, there seems to just be a lot of rumours. No one really knows exactly what went on. I do know a few of the things that happened, but of course, because they're children, I'm not gonna say the details. But I've only read about 4 or 5 things that happened to these girls, like specific things. I know generally what happened to them, but for a video, for a film that's like an hour long altogether, there must have been way more than 4 or 5 things that happened to these children. And online there's just a lot of hearsay, because at the end of the day, a lot of people that have actually seen these videos are not going to come forward and say what's on them, because that would be admitting to seeking out and watching child pornography. So no one is really willing to give an accurate description of what happened in these videos. Of course, police aren't gonna. They've had to sit and watch every single second of those tapes multiple times, but because the victims are children, they're not going to come out and say what happened. But the way that these films are described online by people that have seen multiple snuff films, multiple crimes, like police that have seen multiple things like this in their lifetime, they say that this is the worst thing that they have ever come across in their whole life. And like I said, some of the rumours that I came across while I was researching this video were some of the worst things that I have ever heard. And I do this for a living. I look up serious, disturbing crimes every single day of my life to make these videos, and some of the things that I read that could have potentially gone on in these videos were the worst things I've ever heard. So like I said, in these videos there were 2 women and a man, and throughout the whole 4 parts of this film, The two women were masked so you couldn't see their faces, and the man's face is pixelated in every single shot. However, he is not on camera as much as the women were. He seems to have more of the kind of producing, directing role. So the video starts off, of course, with part 1, and it's already horrendously sick and twisted, and it only gets more and more, worse and worse, as the parts go through to part 4, which is the absolute worst of the whole film. These videos did involve sexual abuse, a lot of sexual abuse, but also a lot of just physical torture, physical abuse. Just these 3 adults inflicting pain on these 3 children. And this is known as hurtcore. It's a whole genre of film on the dark web. And it is exactly how it sounds, hurtcore. It's adults inflicting pain on children for their kind of viewing pleasure. Sometimes they get children to inflict pain on other children, but for some reason that is what these people want to see. Daisy's Destruction found its way onto the biggest hurtcore website, forum thing on the dark web, and this was called Hurt to the Core, and this was where the majority of the community congregated. It became viral among that community. Again, I don't believe everyone saw it, and that was because you had to actually pay to see this video. It was being sold for $10,000 for this full hour-long 4-parter. But I also believe that's why it was quite an urban legend, because only a few people paid, so only a few people could prove that they'd seen it, so then the rest of it was just rumours and hearsay. Although the video was so bad that even other paedophiles in the community on the dark web were denouncing this video and this whole community, saying that they were sick and twisted. So before we carry on about the specific case, like Daisy's Destruction, I just kind of want to talk about the hurtcore community in the dark web a little bit more. I don't doubt that it's still going on, unfortunately. I believe things like that we're never going to be able to put a 100% end to. However, the most notorious people in that community have been locked up, or at least the notorious people back in like 2014, 2015, they were all caught and locked up. The people that were like spreading this kind of things. Of course, there's still people out there that have viewed these kind of videos and they haven't been caught because, like I said, IP addresses are blocked and everything. However, the people that were creating the websites, the people that were creating the videos, well, the majority of them have been locked up. And one of these people, one of the most notorious ones, there's like 5 very, very famous ones. I'm not going to get into every single one of them because this is the Peter Scully case. However, one of those like 5 notorious ones was actually working in childcare during the day. He would work with children and then he would come home and watch these videos of children being hurt and abused and sexually abused. Another one of these 5 notorious people in the community, one of them that owned their own website, like forum thing, actually tried to defend himself to police by saying that he was doing them a service. He was saying to police that he created that website to kind of lure in all these sick, twisted paedophiles that were going to come to watch these videos, and then he was going to take the whole thing to the police and be like, look, I've caught all these horrendous people, like, you can lock them up now. But of course he wasn't going to do that. Anyway, within the whole kind of hurtcore community, everyone knew everyone pretty much because it was such a small community. As you can imagine, that is not something that a lot of people are into. And while these people didn't know each other, because of course they couldn't share their real names or any kind of personal information because you can't trust anyone on the deep web or the dark web. So they would just kind of go by usernames, but everyone knew everyone by their usernames, and they kind of made these like sick friendships where they'd share things with each other. And there was like this hierarchy as well between like the OGs, people that have been part of the community for a long time, people that had their own websites, and then like the newbies that had just found out about the dark web and like the things that they could access, and they'd just become part of the community. And people would even give shout outs to each other in the videos One guy even wrote another person's username on a piece of paper and got a child to hold it up in a video as a shout out to this friend. It was essentially just another social media to them, a place where they could go and make friends and talk about their interests and things that they couldn't talk about with anyone else, but with all this other horrific stuff going on at the same time. And that just shows how messed up these people are, that those two elements can coincide. The kind of making friends and talking about their interests and hardcore pornography of children. That those two things can exist in the same community and no one bats an eyelid. So anyway, back to the actual case that we're talking about. Like I said, the Daisy's Destruction film leaked onto the surface web, which meant it got picked up by police almost immediately, like the second it leaked onto the surface web. So the case was originally picked up by Dutch police, but because of the severity of this case, and because it was online, and because it was on the dark web, and because everyone's faces were covered in these videos, they could have been coming from anywhere. Of course, you can access the internet anywhere in the world. So having just Dutch police on this case didn't make sense at all. So the case was spread pretty much worldwide. Quickly, police theorised that the 3 children in these videos were from the Philippines and they were street children. I hate that phrase, but that is the phrase that is used to describe these kids. They were orphans, and I don't know if it's a regular thing that happens in the Philippines or in this part of the Philippines at least, but orphaned children, if something happens to their parents or if their parents don't want them, they will just leave them on the side of the street, and these children grow up fending for themselves, just living on the side of the street. So this now narrowed down the search to the Philippines, most likely, because the likelihood is that these 3 people, these 3 adults, had found the children already in the Philippines, because why would they find them in the Philippines and then take them out? So the likelihood was that this video was created there. So now police had to try and identify, or at least kind of narrow down, who the 3 adults could have been. So the 2 women were noticeably more tanned than the man. The man was very, very pale white. And the girls also seemed quite young, not children, but maybe teenagers, late teenagers. And so they theorised that the 2 girls were probably also from the Philippines. As for the man, like I said, he was very, very pale white and he was speaking English in these videos, and the girls would speak English back to him, but their English was kind of broken. So that was another thing that told police that they were probably not originally from an English-speaking country, but that the man probably was, because his English was perfect. They couldn't hear him too much, but the things that he was saying sounded like an English-speaking person, you know, like English first language person. Oh god, the grammar. So the case was pushed more to kind of English-speaking countries, Australia, America, England, everywhere like that, and they were like, does anyone recognise this accent? And Australian police came forward and said, that's an Australian accent. So police in Australia started to think about who this man could be. They were looking at different cases, different unsolved cases, maybe potential runaways, and that was when they found something interesting that they could potentially link to this. Police in Australia at the time, in 2014, were working on a case of a man that had something over 70 different charges against him. However, he had completely fled the country before he could be charged with any of them. And this man was named Peter Scully. He was in his late 40s, he had a wife and 2 children, he lived in a nice suburb in Australia, he just had a very normal life, a very normal career, a family man. He was very intelligent, he was wealthy, he was friendly, he was very popular among his peers and people in that area. But underneath all of that, he was a serial fraudster. Over the years, he had swindled over 2.6 million Australian dollars from different investors with this fake kind of property investment scheme. And it was later revealed, like way after this case, that he was also, at the time, running an illegal escort service with just one woman, a young Malaysian woman, that later turned out to be his mistress. So he was this perfect family man by day, and then by night he was this notorious criminal, fraudster, someone that was unfaithful to his wife and hired out his girlfriend as a sex worker. So anyway, around 2011-2012, before the video was made, police found out that all of this was going on behind closed doors with Peter Scully, and so he was a wanted man. However, normally when it's something this serious, police kind of keep that quiet because he was obviously a flight risk. And that is exactly what he did when he found out that he was a wanted man. He fled the country. Police initially theorised that maybe he'd gone to Malaysia with his girlfriend. However, searching the whole of Malaysia was not really an option. And so police at this point just felt really helpless as to what to do. They had no idea where he could be or where to even start with that. And then around 2 years later, this video pops up of a white Australian man and 2 young Asian women. And so police feared that maybe this was another one of Peter Scully's kind of escort services, escort schemes, whatever the hell he was doing. So police began making more and more connections between the cases. I don't know exactly what those connections were, but they quickly realised that they were on the right path and they had the right man. So police began looking for Peter Scully in the Philippines, and they had very few leads, but they were exhausting every single lead that would come in, and eventually this led them to one particular city, Malay City. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I did not say that right. It would take police years to track this man down. Daisy's Destruction, the video, was made in 2012, and they eventually found him in that city in 2015. That's 3 years that he could have been doing so much worse. But before we talk about the rest of the things that he did in that time, I just want to kind of round off the Daisy's Destruction part of this video. So police did eventually find 2 of the 3 children that were featured in that video. They found the oldest child, who was 12 years old at the time of the video, and they also found Daisy, who was the 18-month-old baby. Daisy was alive and she was a toddler at this point. However, she had sustained such horrendous injuries during those videos and during the time that Peter had her. She sustained such awful injuries that she will have lasting physical damage to her body. I don't know exactly what that is, but she will never be fully healthy. However, the 11-year-old that was featured in those videos wasn't with the other 2 children, and I couldn't find exactly what happened to her. There were some sources that said some things and other sources said that she was never found. So I'm going to tell you what the sources said, however just bear in mind that some of them also said she was never found, so I'm not sure how accurate this next bit is. Supposedly Peter Scully strangled this child to death when she could no longer handle the torture and the abuse, and then he buried her under the floorboards of his home. Now, I have seen pictures of like a dug up floor in a home, but you know, you can't always trust articles on the internet, especially when it's about dark web cases. A lot of people like to spread misinformation about dark web cases, I guess because there's a lot of creepypastas about the dark web anyway. I think a lot of people disregard how true and real this kind of stuff is. So yeah, I don't know what happened to that last child, but we do know that Peter Scully did murder her. However, the sources that said he did all of that I just mentioned also said that he allegedly filmed himself doing it to her and then put that video on the dark web. However, these 3 girls that were featured in Daisy's Destruction weren't Peter Scully's only victims. He actually had 2 more after that. So just for a little bit more context, Peter Scully did actually have 2 girlfriends in the Philippines, and these women are confirmed to have been the masked women in those videos. These girlfriends were 18-year-old Carme Ann Alvarez and 19-year-old Liesl Margallo. Both of these women grew up street kids themselves in the Philippines, and they were taken literally from the side of the road by Peter Scully himself when they were still children. And he brought them up in such a strange way. He was obviously grooming them, but he brought them up half like his child and half like his girlfriend. It was a very weird dynamic, and he would also sell these girls to other men for periods of time. So he would sell them as sex workers, but he would let them keep them for days at a time, and it was just a very, very confusing and messed up dynamic. And they were also Peter Scully's own sex slaves when they were at home, so they really never had a break from any kind of sexual abuse. And because he did call them his girlfriends, and because he had groomed them so much and told them that this relationship that they had was special, and because they didn't have family, they didn't have parents, they'd never seen a healthy relationship before, so they didn't know that this wasn't what everyone else was going through. They thought that this was a normal relationship. And the girls have since said that they felt safe with Peter Scully, even though they would watch him literally commit murder in front of their eyes and abuse these children and these girls. They said they never thought Scully would have turned on them at any point. They said that the relationship that they had with him was different to the ones that he had with other girls. So around 2014, the end of 2014 or the beginning of 2015, Peter Scully turned to his girlfriend Alvarez and told her that he wanted to adopt some children. He said he was really keen to help out a child that might need it, and so he was thinking about just getting some street children off the street, just like he did with his girlfriends. And at first, his girlfriend Alvarez tried to kind of talk him out of it. She was like, well, why don't we just get my sister to come live with us? You can look after her instead of bringing in a street child that we don't know. But Scully insisted that they get 2 street children. He wanted to bring up 2 more street children, just like he had done with her. He presented this idea to Alvarez and his other girlfriend as kind of this opportunity to change a child's life. He was going to bring them in and raise them and give them all these opportunities in life. Really, the only reason he wanted a street kid was because they have no family to notice them go missing. He knew his intentions. He knew that he was either gonna kidnap this child for a long, long time and groom them and have them raised just like his other 2 girlfriends, or he was gonna kill them. And he couldn't do that with Alvarez's little sister. So Peter Scully gave his girlfriend Alvarez very specific instructions. He told her to go out onto the street and not to come back until she found 2 young girls, specifically aged 9 and 12. And it didn't take long before she came across 2 girls, 2 cousins, those exact ages, and they were very poor street children. And so she lured them back to the house on the pretense that they could have food, they could stay over, they could have breakfast the next morning. So Alvarez took the girls back to the house and just dropped them off there with Scully and left. And as soon as they were there, they were given food just as promised, and everything seemed fine. However, after they finished eating the food, Peter Scully told both of the girls to strip down naked, and that was when he took pictures of them and posted them on the dark web. He also took a video of the girls directing them to do certain things to each other, which is just horrendous, so sad to think about, and he posted that video as well. After that, he began abusing both of the girls, who of course began screaming and crying, and to stop them from making noise, one of his girlfriends went and got a pillow and began smothering them to near death. The next morning, when the girls woke up, Scully gave them more food for breakfast, and then when they finished that, he told them to go out into the back garden and begin digging. And as they were, Scully came out to the garden and told them that they were digging their own graves, and that he was soon going to kill them and they were going to be laid to rest exactly where they were digging. And after 5 whole days of joining in this abuse and torture of these 2 little girls, Alvarez suddenly felt very remorseful when she saw that Peter Scully had put these 2 girls in dog collars. That was the thing that made her feel remorseful. and so she unchained the girls from these collars and let them go. And luckily these two little girls were brave enough to go to the police about what had just happened to them, and that was when they finally tracked down and arrested Peter Scully in 2015. They arrested him on suspicion of 75 different charges, and that included murder, rape, fraud, kidnap, human trafficking, and of course police seized all of his electronics, computers, phones, everything to see the extent of what Peter Scully had been doing all these years. However, they didn't get very far with that. Suspiciously enough, the room that was holding all of Peter Scully's electronics, computers and everything set on fire. Just that one room. And unfortunately, everything in there was burnt beyond recovery. There was literally nothing that police could do at that point. And people believe that Peter Scully had bribed a police officer to set this fire in the room, because who knows what police would have found on those electronics. And police in the Philippines are pretty known for being quite corrupt, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that that is the case, because we know that Peter Scully was very, very wealthy. He did have a lot of money. So now police had absolutely no evidence to say that Peter Scully had a part in Daisy's destruction or any of these other forums or videos or anything like that. They couldn't prove it, unfortunately. However, what they could prove was that Peter Scully had kidnapped and abused and tortured these other two little girls for 5 days, and unfortunately that is all they could charge him with. They couldn't charge him with anything to do with Daisy's destruction. However, he was charged with 1 count of human trafficking and 5 counts of rape. So he was found guilty in 2018. However, had he been found guilty any earlier than that, he would have been eligible for the death penalty. However, in the Philippines in 2017, they passed a law that rape was no longer grounds for capital punishment. Instead, Peter Scully was just given a life sentence, and he is serving that, I believe, back over in Australia, or they will be taking him back to Australia to serve it. I don't know if he's still in the Philippines now. However, one little interesting piece of information to kind of end this video on is that Peter Scully is actually rumoured to be writing a book from jail. And this book is like an autobiography. You know, like what celebrities write about their life when people are really interested in them and want to know their life story. Peter Scully is writing one of those about his life story up until now, up until him being sat in jail writing the book. So I don't know if he's gonna go into detail about his crimes or if this is even true. This is a rumour. But if it is true, I really, really hope that book is never published, or at least if it is published, I hope that he gets none of the profits. I hope it all goes to some sort of charity, because otherwise he's effectively just making money off of his crimes again. But that's it for this case. Thank you so much for watching. As for today's charity shout out, today we're going to be talking about Freedom from Torture. Freedom from Torture help to support survivors of horrendous torture, things that we've talked about in today's video, because they are very, very real and people are going through them every single day. Many of the people that the charity help are refugees or asylum seekers coming to the UK, escaping that torture elsewhere, be it because they know something they shouldn't, or whether it's some kind of gang thing. Freedom from Torture gives survivors therapy, kind of emotional support, helps them get back into society, helps them build back confidence and social skills and everything that they will have lost being a victim of torture. Not only that, but the charity also fight for, of course, change and to stop all of this kind of thing, but also just awareness. I think a lot of people forget that this is real and that things like this are going on across the world every single day to so many people. We hear stories like this and you might think it's just a one-off, a really horrendous case, but things like this are going on all the time. The charity put on support groups for survivors to all come together and take up a hobby like cooking or gardening. It helps them make friends with each other, gain confidence back in strangers and society and just the human race, and it just helps them build their self-esteem again, get their social skills back, because it really destroys people. They help to train up professionals to be able to deal with this kind of thing. So they help to train up therapists to talk specifically about torture and what these people have been through. If you want to donate to Freedom from Torture, of course the link will be down below in the description. Just £3 can help transport a survivor to a medical assessment to get checked over. £20 could pay for seeds for a full gardening support group to help bring these people together, and £50 could fund a whole therapy session for a survivor. Of course, I don't expect any one person to donate £50. If you could, that would be amazing, but don't feel like you have to pull that kind of money together because that is a lot. However, I'm thinking maybe collectively we could all just put a little bit in and get to £50. That would be amazing. You don't understand how happy and proud it makes me when you all tell me that you've donated or that you've shared the charity on your social medias. Like, I don't know, it just makes me burst with pride. I feel like we're really doing something, you know, on this channel, like all together as a little community on my channel. Like, I feel like we're all really making a difference, and it just makes me really, really happy. So if you could spare just at least £1, or, you know, I don't know what the minimum donation is. I should have checked. I'm sure it would mean a lot to the person that it goes to. But yeah, like I said, the link to donate will be down in the description. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to see some more from me. A huge thank you to all of my channel members. All of the names are on screen right now. If you'd like to become a channel member, you can click the join button under the video if you're on a desktop, or if you can't find the join button, there'll be a link in the description. If you become a channel member, you'll get access to a bunch of extra perks. You get your name on this end screen at the end of all of my videos. You get access to a members only community tab where we talk about the cases. You can suggest cases for me to cover on my channel, and you get your suggestions fast tracked. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my second channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!